Fearless Females Voice Podcast, a podcast where women's stories and experiences are shared to inspire and empower others. For this episode, I thought I'd do something a little different. I recorded my first ever solo podcast on my experiences and I loved recording it, but this time I wanted to share another one of my passions, which is reading. I have a love for reading which started during the first lockdown in March 2020. I ended up reading for at least an hour every day and I made it my non-negotiable. I absolutely love the way a book transformed me into a new realm. I was so lost in my books that when my fiancé tried to talk to me whilst I was reading, I just couldn't respond as I was just in my own world. So it was my me time. I started off reading last year with fiction books, but decided to explore more non-fiction books and self-help books. This allowed me to gain inspiration and explore new areas of my life. However, after reading more and more self-development books, I realized that the messaging became quite samey to me. So it's almost like I was reading the same thing over and over again. So my fiancé suggested I go back to fiction. I was then reading fiction in a new light and found that the hidden messages from the stories are so powerful and act as a self-development. So I loved exploring the key themes of the books and the behaviors of the characters and the different storylines. I always had something that I was learning through the fiction reading. So I decided to start a book club, as I was craving to discuss the books after I'd read them to see what others gained from them and what insights that they had. So I've read a few books this year, and I wanted to review some of the key ones which I've loved so far. So the books which I'll be reviewing on this episode are: number 1, A Promised Land by Barack Obama; number 2, The Beekeeper of Aleppo by Christy, Lefteri; number 3, Good Vibes, Good Life by Vex King; and number 4, The 40 Rules of Love by Elif, Shafak. So let's get stuck in. It's very early in the year, but I'd probably say A Promised Land is the best book that I have read in 2021. So I remember going into Waterstones to buy this and thinking, wow, it's huge. And what I tend to find is when I'm faced with a big book, I know it's obviously going to take a lot of time to read, so it is quite a big commitment. So I need to make sure that it's going to be good so that I'm able to stay tuned into the book. And this one definitely delivered on that. It was incredible. So I read Becoming by Michelle last year, and that was one of my favorites. So I had to give this one a go. The two stories complement each other really well, and Barack Obama and also Michelle Obama both share their individual stories from their perspective on the same time period, which makes it really interesting. A Promised Land is about Barack's first term as President of the United States. It starts off with his childhood and upbringing and him meeting Michelle, but the chunk of it is about his career in politics and the rise to leadership. It's written extremely well, and I'd say I learned a lot about American politics from it, which I knew pretty much nothing about beforehand. His writing is so gripping and he easily creates tension throughout the book to captivate the reader. He shows us a glimpse of the intense moments whilst working as the President of the United States and making key decisions, and then blends that nicely in with his home life as well. He isn't afraid to share his challenges and openly talks about his marriage with Michelle and where the pinch points were and his reflections on his fatherhood during his career. Being one of the most important people in the world meant he was in demand and working long hours. This had an impact on his home life, but the strength of Michelle and their relationship withstood that pressure. They both showed tremendous support and empathy towards each other and have an understanding when it came to the changes which were taking place in their life. Which leads me nicely onto their relationship. Now, I consider Michelle as a strong, fearless female. She has been through a lot and came out victorious. I admire all the work that she has done with the younger generation and how she always stands up for what she believes in. It was initially difficult for her knowing that her partner was not going to be around as much as she had hoped, and she was initially reluctant as well about Barack running for president. But she gave in knowing that it was for the greater good and he would be able to use his abilities and strengths to do good in the world. I do wonder sometimes what it would be like not having your husband around as much and raising children on your own for majority of the time. It must have been difficult, but it takes a certain type of woman and strength to do that. I would highly recommend this book. Stick with it to uncover some of the key decisions which were made in history, some humor and insights into the world leaders, and a glimpse of romance and family life. The second book is The Beekeeper of Aleppo. Now, this was the first fiction book that I read this year, and it was recommended to me. I read the blurb online and thought it would be an interesting read, so bought it off Amazon. The book is about a family in Syria who flee to the UK due to the war and terror taking place in their hometown. The main story shows their journey of getting from Syria through Europe, finally leading to the UK, and the challenges they faced. The book is written from the perspective of the main character, who is called Nuri. One of the things which I loved about this book is that the story goes back and forth from present time to the life in Syria. This allows a reader to understand more about the character's life, the background, and paints the picture of the world they were living in. It is really cleverly done within each chapter. The author, Christy Lefteri, captures their journey beautifully, and you're able to feel yourself within the refugee camps and also just viewing the surroundings. Nuri and his wife Afra saw all the turmoil around them in Syria, but it wasn't until their son died which was the trigger for them wanting to move away, as death was surrounding them. Afra was also blinded by the incident of her son dying, so this impacted her and Nuri's relationship. Afra is a strong character and has a good intuition. She grounds Nuri and keeps him sane. Even though she's unable to see Nuri, she feels the sadness within him and allows him to explore this himself in order to get over his hurt and pain. I could really feel the love between the couple, and it wasn't portrayed in an obvious way. They had both gone through a terrible ordeal and were getting over their past in their own way. This book is truly captivating and also provocative. It will take you through the emotions from their journey, and I felt the key themes were around strength, hope, and freedom. When I think of storytelling, this book does it perfectly. I would highly recommend this book. The third book is Good Vibes, Good Life: How Self-Love is the Key to Unlocking Your Greatness by Vex King. Now, I didn't really know much about Vex prior to reading this book, so decided to listen to one of his podcasts and had a quick glance at his Instagram page to get more of a feel for what he is about. He's known for sharing motivational quotes and posts on encouragement. Someone had recommended this book to me and said it would be useful for me at the time that I was in. When I started reading this book, it gave a glimpse of the struggles which he had been through during his childhood. It's very powerful and moving to see how far he has come in terms of shifting his mindset and also behaviors. And that's what he's trying to show the reader within this book: how to make a change and encapsulate good vibes and positivity. I love the title, as I am a firm believer of self-love unlocking the key to greatness and everything good in your life. His messaging is split within different chapters and allows a reader to embark on their own spiritual journey through reading. There are key concepts and themes which he explores, and he provides examples from his own life to make it easier to understand and put things into perspective. The book is easy to read and will be relatable to all. It's aimed at those who are looking to search beyond what they know, who are open-minded and want to learn. There are solutions embedded within this book which can be implemented in your life, so it's not just a tell type book. I'd really recommend it. The final book I'll be reviewing is The 40 Rules of Love. Now, my fiance asked me what I wanted for Christmas last year, and I responded, a book. So this was my Christmas present. I'd never heard of this book before, but I was definitely glad I received a fiction book. I would say this is one of the most cleverly written books that I have read, one of the most thought-provoking, and one of the most insightful. This is a prime example of a fiction book being so strong in the messaging that it forms some sort of self-help book. It allows you to see the bigger picture and interpret the messaging to reflect your life. 40 Rules of Love starts off as a normal book about a woman, Ella, who is the main character, who lives a normal life with her husband and children. But quite early on at the start, you realise that she isn't really happy in her life. She married young, had children young, and didn't manage to explore her full self. She was no longer in love with her husband, had lost her identity, and wasn't happy regardless of her having everything she could have wanted. Now, what's happened to Ella is more common than we think. Women can easily lose their identity within their children, marriage, or home life, which I have seen before. Ella hadn't done anything for herself in a while and was stuck in her same routine. She didn't have to work as her husband was earning enough for both of them, so she was a housewife. But she yearned for adventure and love, and this book shows her finding this. She took on a job which allowed her to review novels, and the first one was called Sweet Blasphemy. This transported her into another world in the 13th century and allowed her to see things differently. The 40 Rules of Love reminds me of a kind of Inception type book, meaning we as the reader are reading Ella's story, but then it goes into the novel which she is reading. So the author has created two parallel narratives. It is so cleverly written, and I feel Elif Shafak is pretty much a genius for creating this. She tells a story from start to end from many different characters' points of views, and it all ties in so well. We as the reader are transported into the different characters' minds and feelings. Within the 13th century tale of Sweet Blasphemy, the main character Shams is a mystical and spiritual Sufi dervish. Within this novel, Shams is looking for his companion and comes across an Islamic scholar called Rumi. Shams and Rumi learn together and go through the meaning of love, and they eventually form a brotherly love bond which no one can touch. Shams recites the 40 Rules of Love, and whilst reading more and more of Sweet Blasphemy, Ella realizes that she no longer has love in her life, as it is described between the two characters within the novel. This opens her mind to new opportunities and thoughts to find her love and go on an adventure. The themes and messaging within 40 Rules of Love are brilliant. It has Islamic references which highlight scriptures and meanings which can be misinterpreted by all. And this is a theme within the book about misinterpretation. This then means that one person will do something differently to another even if they have read the same thing. So here are a couple of the 40 Rules of Love which are described within the book. So this is a quote from the book. Most of the problems of the world stem from linguistic mistakes and simple misunderstandings. Don't ever take words at face value. When you step into the zone of love, language, as we know it, becomes obsolete. That which cannot be put into words can only be grasped through silence. That's the first one. And the second one is, intellect and love are made of two different materials. Intellect ties peoples in knots and risks nothing, but love dissolves all tangles and risks everything. Intellect is always cautious and advises, beware, too much ecstasy, whereas love says, oh, never mind, take the plunge. Intellect does not easily break down, whereas love can effortlessly reduce itself to rubble. But treasures are hidden amongst ruins. A broken heart hides treasure. And that's the second quote. I would highly recommend this book, and I will definitely be reading it again later this year. So I'll be checking out more from Elif as well, just to see what else she has written, as I feel her reading style really resonates with me. So that's all from me for now. I hope you enjoyed the listen, and I will speak to you soon.